it better to be passionate or is it better to be fascinated? And his theory was fascination will be endlessly intriguing. Passion, you can burn out and start making really brash or irresponsible decisions. So if you're fascinated with surfing, you will maintain its balance because of the joy it brings. And been metering the resonance of the board. Like you can see how they retain a resonant frequency for longer, and you measure them years later.
Welcome back, or welcome to the show. If you are new, this is an educational resource for surfers, and each episode is standalone and timeless, so please go back through the catalogue. Lots of learning to do. Big thanks to everyone who donated recently, and special thanks to those who made that a recurring donation. I'm especially keen to hear from you, the listener, some questions. What are you most frustrated with surfing at the moment? What do you want to learn about? And some guest suggestions, and especially contacts if you have any. And one of the topics that Donald and I would like to hear some feedback on, which we discuss at length in this interview, is fascination versus obsession, or fascination versus passion. So you can email me, mike@surfmastery.com, or engage on Instagram @surfmastery. Okay, today's guest is Donald Brink. Donald is originally from South Africa, but is based in San Clemente in Southern California. Donald is a very keen surfer and very talented surfboard shaper. You can check out his designs and products at brinksurf.com. If you'd like to hear a little bit more from Donald, including a longer bio and a backstory of his, you can go back to episode number 42 of this podcast, which was recorded back in May 2019. But in today's episode, we talk about life a little bit. We discuss our relationship to the ocean. We talk about surfboard volume versus support, the resonant frequency of surfboard. We compare a lot of comparisons of music to surfing, the evolution of surf coaching, and much, much more. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Donald Brink.
How are you, mate?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Oh yeah, I'm doing great, man. But man, it's been so long since we've chatted, and I know your world has changed, and then you've just had one thing after the next, and then we keep not being able to get together, and it's just life stuff. But yeah, I've been thinking about you.
Yeah, life has thrown some many curveballs since last time I saw you. Yeah, indeed. Well, last time I saw you, I was living in Point Dume, Malibu. I had a nanny and a cleaner and a business, and and now I'm a sole parent and living in the middle of nowhere in New Zealand.
I didn't know if you were in Oz or New Zealand. That's why I was like, oh, you might be in New Zealand if it's 45 degrees.
And I literally got a moon boot on because I had I broke my ankle. Life's been challenging, man, but that's the way it goes, isn't it?
I mean, I think so, but the reason I'm asking because I'm so fascinated, but your spirits seem high right now, and that's really encouraging to me. And so I know life isn't easy, and nobody's is, and there's seasons in and out, but I can hear you've got a buoyant spirit, which is really encouraging.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the future, man.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm definitely feeling optimistic and positive, and it's been a hell of a journey because if I think back to what I just described, I was living in Point Dume, Malibu, successful business, it looks nice on the surface, but I'd rather be where I am now than back there.
Wow.
Because the personal romantic relationship I was in was just that bad.
Mm.
And
Okay.
I was only, at the time, I was only partially aware of that, of how bad it was.
Mm.
But then, a year or so after we spoke, that relationship, she moved out. She just moved out of our house. And because I had signed off as a New Zealander being in America, you have to sign off. One person becomes the main visa holder and the rest of the family gets a secondary visa. So therefore everything's in her name and she has all of the control. And so she really ran with that control. And sort of, there wasn't much I could do, really. And if I was to file for divorce at the time, then I would lose my visa and I would have to go back to New Zealand. So I had to legally maintain the status quo in order to, be in the physical presence of my children. So essentially she was just using that control over me. And whilst I was still, living in Malibu and surfing every day, and, it was getting put through the ringer by that romantic relationship. So I always, if I ever think back, gosh, it'd be nice to just be, surfing Little Doom, and I think back, hold on, it's not all that surface level material stuff is not worth what was happening within the relationship. And I'm so glad that I'm not with her anymore, as harsh as that might sound. That's something that keeps me positive, because it was such hell. And now I have, whilst I don't have anything, technically, we lost everything. Was all material. And now what I do have is the ability to control and to shape my own life. It's hard to start from scratch, especially when you have 3 young dependent children. But I still feel blessed to be in this situation, more so than I was in what on the surface looked like a great situation. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, that really is it. It's like perception of how things either are to somebody else or how they used to be. But it's like, it comes to like maintaining peace. I think it's like when you're in a peaceful situation or a peaceful part of life, like that's more than anybody could ask for. You know what I mean? It's like disease is dis-ease. Like that's all the word means. It's like when things aren't at ease. And I always think about peace being like peace or dis-peace, which isn't a word, but it's a nice concept to unpack, and yeah, all those surfs and times don't really matter when you look at the big picture, right?
Yeah, and interesting, I literally just got off another podcast interview with Holly Beck. I don't know if you're aware of her. She's a long-time ex-pro surfer, long-time surf coach who's now moving into the surfing therapy world. And we're sort of just discussing how, surfing is an art form and it's a reflection of, art reflects life, and one's relationship to the ocean is similar to one's personal relationships, etc. And it makes me realize of because along that, when I last spoke to you, I think not long after I'd interviewed you, I had an interview with Scott Bass, and we were talking about the surfer's relationship to surfing. And I was going through a period in my life where I was realizing, well, hold on, do I own my surfing life, or does the craving of surfing own me? And I was starting to develop a healthier relationship with surfing and choosing when I go surf, rather than letting the weather essentially dictate my life, and gaining more of an ownership and control of my relationship with surfing in the ocean. And it's interesting to think back now, it's the same thing was happening in my personal relationships. I started to take a stand and say, no, hold on, I'm me. I'm not just your husband, and you can't just treat me like this. And then she obviously didn't like that, and she moved out. But it's similar how those two relationships, my relationship with surfing and the ocean, and my relationship with her, they both grew. And essentially, from any sort of technical perspective, I have a much more functional relationship with surfing and the ocean now. And I was trying to get out. We were in counseling and therapy as well. So I was really driving, hey, let's make this relationship functional. Like let's make it equal. And then she was diagnosed with a narcissistic personality disorder, alcohol. She had alcohol and drug addiction that she would not address. So she was unwilling to make our relationship functional. She wouldn't even do it, for the sake of the kids. And she chose to move out and dive into her addiction more, Whereas the cool thing about the ocean is the ocean doesn't necessarily do that to you. You know, if you take the eye off the ball, you can get slammed into the reef, but, you know, the ocean's just always going to do the ocean's thing. And I think if your relationship to the ocean is similar to what I described with my ex, then maybe surfing's not your thing.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, because it isn't the right thing for many people, but then there's also seasons. But I think the thing that I found most accurate when I'm looking at this within my own context and within others, and just being in and around surfing and what it is, it's all the same stuff. And that's why it makes me know it's real. Like, if the wisdom in somebody's world in terms of their relationship or their surfing or their parenting or their business decisions, if something isn't, if you can't try it on for size in every one of those categories, it's probably not true, you know? Like, surely there's nuance and idiosyncrasies and detail within each of them, but there's these overarching themes and even philosophy or resonance that it's all the same stuff, which is it's because it's all real. And that makes me know that surfing really matters, because I see it is the same, as you said, with that relationship can mirror or be as deep or intense or ebbing and flowing. And as that, I always like to say, to cultivate that fascination with the sea, because it is a relationship, but I like to address it as a fascination rather, because it lets it be a little more open-ended and hold a little more precious, because sometimes it gets taken away from you. Look, right now you're injured, still a surfer. You might be loving it more now because you're imagining things, you've got this anticipatory stoke. So yeah, that's as far as I've gotten in my own thoughts, is like, okay, this is a fascination and I need to cultivate it, because I put value on it because I see the value it brings to me. You know, I don't have to prove that, I just feel it. So I assign value to it because to me it's real and it makes a difference. And it's the same for the boards, you know, like, the stuff matters, you know. This isn't just another noun that somebody owns or buys or uses. It's like, it connects people, not to get too deep, but it is deep because I've seen it make a change. I felt it myself, and then you see it for others, and it's like, oh, there's a mystery in it, and it's pretty cool. It's actually really cool. I love it.
Surfing is deep, yeah. It really is, and it does matter. I'm glad you said that. And I'm definitely excited about, you know, recovering from this injury and getting back into surfing, because I know as I'm growing as a person, I know that it's going to make me be able to focus on surfing better and develop my relationship with the ocean. So I am excited to get back in the water once I'm ready to, but at the same time, I'm not feeling anxious about missing it either. Which I know in previous injuries I have been. But let me ask you, how would you describe your current relationship with surfing in the ocean?
Oh, it's, I'm so blessed, because I can say right now it's been so, I've been surfing every single day for, I mean, now and again I'll miss a day. Today I missed, put time aside to do this, and I'm glad to. I don't think I'll get it into the water after this with family things, but I've been surfing so much. But what I did was, I really have pivoted to like real short sessions, and it's been really good for me, like really good to be working on testing boards and working on design ideas, and then also just working on my own surfing. Yeah, I would say I'm more frustrated with my surfing because I'm trying to get to new levels. No, not new levels, I don't like the language on that. I'm looking for more and I'm finding it. But that brings frustration too, because the more you know, the more you want to do, or the more you're trying to feel, right? But I'm surfing better than I ever have, without doubt. So it's encouraging, right? And one of the things I was thinking about with what we were going to talk about, because I didn't know what we were going to talk about, so I was thinking about things that I would like to talk about. And of course we go wherever we go, but like is I think that unless you're trying to do something with or for your surfing, if you're not working towards a goal, look, it's still going to be fun. But once you do or are trying to work towards something with your surfing or within your surfing, it radically focuses things. And I'm getting so much more out of my surfing because it's not that I hadn't been intentional, it's just I'm being so hyper-focused right now And it's like with intention comes this incredible, maybe you can just measure the gain, you know what I mean? Like, oh, well, this is coming together. It doesn't make it was easier, but you start to get this more consistent reward is the wrong word, a more consistency in your surfing, which is just more fun in a bit of a variety of conditions, variety of moods, variety of life. Like what surfing is becoming way more consistent. And I'm not necessarily surfing consistently as well as I want to, but maybe you're just understanding it at a deeper level. And yeah, I'm really cherishing that right now. And I know it won't end so long as I keep fascinated, because it's endlessly deep, which I don't need to tell you. But yeah, I'm really, gosh, I'm more stoked on surfing now than I ever have been.
It's good to hear. Yeah, so I mean, surfing, you can take it. I mean, Kelly Slater can always find surfboards or types of waves to challenge them. It can always get better. It doesn't matter how good you get. That's one of the coolest things about surfing. And you're right, if you don't have a goal or a place to go, it's like that old adage, it's like if you're a fruit on a tree, you know, as soon as you're ripe, or you think you're ripe as a surfer, then you start to rot. There's nowhere else to go. So you've always got to be, you know, trying to get better in some way, I think. And that's especially true for those listening to this podcast. Not necessarily true for anyone. I think, you know, people surf for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's just to, you know, have a chat to the salty dog out the back, you know. But but yeah, so what are you working on in your surfing at the moment?
Well, it's, yeah, I think everybody has a few things that they, let's call them the Achilles heel, you know, technically speaking, that are getting in their way of consistently doing good surfing. And this is a broad brushstroke throughout a variety of equipment and conditions, which I think is fitting then to talk about it that way. But yeah, there's always things that everyone's got different ones, but that are in your way of, you got to get rid of them, and they'll always be something you probably have to work on. You know, I think it's just a lot of natural, untrained, like basic fundamentals sometimes, or sometimes it's body language and mechanics. But yeah, for me, like there's always a few things, like getting low and staying low throughout, from the start of the turn through the finish of a turn, is always going to be something that I'll like default out of into standing tall through a turn, which I shouldn't be. And so you're constantly reminding yourself of that, and like, you know, you'd think of more common things that most people don't get right day in and day out that they just need to if they want to improve, and it's things like, you know, not having your back foot on the tail pad on a performance board, or, you know, little things like that. And so for me, it's like just brushing up on like, I'm trying to find next level in certain designs and boards, and that comes with having to know that you're doing the right thing on them. So I've been working on really small wave designs in particular, and if you don't, I'm trying to build these boards so that you can stay on rail, even though it's a tight canvas, the whole way through a turn. But because the board's got volume and support, which I think is a better word for volume, you can stand tall and wiggle around if you want to and just get real lazy. But if you're willing to sign up and say, this is a performance board and it will stay on rail and it'll do the best turn out there for sure, let alone the best turn on that wave, because it fits the wave so well. So holding yourself accountable to basically go out there, put the board on rail, stay on rail, just like good surfing should be, but reminding myself of that every time. And you can't police other people's decisions, but when you're accountable in and of your own choices of what you're doing or not doing, or what you're not going to be willing to be lazy on, in other words, just going along for the ride as opposed to like really doing proper turns, that's been something that's like, it's really good. Like constantly, I'll make notes on my board, like write pencil notes, little like visual cues to like tee up these things, and basically you just keep reminding yourself of it, and it's worked really well, keeping you in the moment. And like, yeah, every day there's homework to do. So those are the things that will sort of pop up in this conversation that I'm just thinking about, you know, just recently been working on. And yeah, after 5-6 waves, you're like, okay, you do the right thing, it feels really good.
What you said that support is a better word for or a better interpretation of the concept of volume in a board?
I've been trying that on for size. I've spent countless hours with people discussing boards, and there is no vernacular or glossary of terms, which I like. I like that we're clawing for words and the way people describe boards or sensations, and actually mostly frustrations, really helps one design and like get between the lines of what they need, what they want, what they need. And I've been using that word of support, interchange it with when somebody mentions volume. Can you switch it out for support, and does the statement hold up, or does it fall apart, or does it highlight maybe some other sensations or needs or frustrations once again? And it works really well. So it's an awkward word, but I think it's try it on for size next time you're thinking about.
I like it. I get it, but it also makes me think that maybe there is a relationship between the volume of a surfboard and the flexibility.
When you say flexibility, you meaning variety of conditions, or the actual twist and flex property pattern?
Yeah, the twist and flex property pattern of the board, because I've got a 9.6 boat of a surfboard that I can't even get my arm around. It's got so much volume, but it's a soft top and it flexes like crazy, and I can surf the shit out of it simply, I think, because it's so flexy and bendy.
Does it have a wide tail, or is the tail pulled in?
It's got a little bit of a pulled in tail, yeah. But I just know if it was a stiff fiberglass board, it would just be a complete pig.
Yeah, just a tracker.
But because it bends so much, it just seems to, I don't know, mold to the curve of the wave a little bit more than a stiffer board would. So that makes me think more. I wonder if volume and flexibility have a bit of a relationship there. Like, would a stiffer board with less volume feel just as supportive as a slightly more flexible board with more volume?
I mean, they definitely there's an interplay, of course, and that's why I always like to think of a cohesive collection of elements in a board, not just one thing. So isolating one property is dangerous in my world. I don't like to do that. But I know that the boards we love are ones that fit the waves, and the ones that twist and flex, and they all do, but the ones that twist and flex to, let's say, a desirable degree, they're really good surfboards. And that's why those boards that we love and eventually you wear out and they stop working, or they just lose their spark, like people have said for years and years, like, that's the biggest frustration in my book. I'm like, what? And to me, that's like polyester has a propensity to do that. But yeah, I switched over and do 100% of my work in epoxy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When I went start to finish again, which I used to do, and then for a few years I didn't, and the last bunch of years I've been start to finish again, every board. And it's, even if I'm shaping a polyester blank, which is rare nowadays, all epoxy resin, and it's hard to work with, but there's it's actually really interesting to look at the older boards that, I mean, some of them they're not old, they're only 8 or 10 years old, but how they look and feel versus how they used to look and feel. And there's an argument to be made that there is less of a deterioration over time, especially over like radical frequent use. A board you ride once a year, that's an anomaly. But you want boards to move. You can lock them up and make them too stiff. It's really easy to make stronger surfboards. It's just we won't enjoy them. So
interesting. So you want something that's flexible but durable at the same time. And epoxy has those properties more so than poly?
Oh, these are brave statements. No, I think what I'm realizing or have heard, and I'm trying on for size daily as I meter and measure things, is that epoxies seem to not break themselves down as fast in terms of like the tiny stresses and those kinds of things. And I'm using different materials when I'm using the actual fiberglass cloths, but that's been less of an issue, I've found, and been metering the resonance of the boards, and that's a whole topic for another world. But like, you can see how they retain a resonant frequency for longer, and you measure them years later. Yeah, really.
Hold on. How do you measure the resonance of a board?
Guitar tuner. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's not rocket science. It's just like, when you pick up a board and you give it a little tap and it's got a ping, ping, ping. And yeah. So I started to catalog that stuff because I was frustrated about like, wait, which one's magic? And then how do we keep the magic, right? Like, that's the quest. So set on a path to and mixing up which materials, which layups, how the weave's going, and then baking, curing, and like there's just all these little elements. And I was like, okay, let's get on the same page with. You got to, if you don't have any data to analyze, you're just guessing. And that was where my confidence came in those statements of like I'm noticing that, because I'd heard that these epoxy boards, I think Morris Cole's probably on record for saying that's why that board of, is it the Tom Curran turn, is still in such good condition. I mean, it's been in a really well archived collector's suite for years now, but apparently that board was glassed with epoxy, and there's comments from years gone by on the apparent durability of that choice of material, the resin in particular. And yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, the short story is just trying to build stuff that works and lasts, and if it changes, can only start feeling better rather than deteriorating, and something you love starts to fade away, like one's health. It's just so depressing, but it's true. So yeah.
So is there any commonalities of the pitches of the surfboards you've like?
Yeah, I mean, I'd venture to say that one day I think we'd be able to forecast a resonant frequency of a board before you build it. And I try now, but it's just because of like similar length, shape, thickness, those kinds of things. I'm like, with this layup, this will probably be around about 190 hertz or 205. Like you just start to get a familiarity with certain boards. But yeah, I do think there's an ability to be able to forecast that. And at best, my dream would be to infuse the right frequency into a board. And I've tried some stuff. It hasn't worked yet, but I don't have all the tools, let alone, you'd have to build them, really. But, yeah, it's not rocket science. You walk through a guitar shop and you play 6 guitars and you like one. And you go to the next shop and you play another 6 and you didn't like it, and you go back and buy the one that you liked the first time, right? It's the same thing, except for it's a little bit more of there's a bit of a mystery, because what's doing what, and that's why I'm saying it's the cohesion. But there's something going on, and I like that.
Interesting. So you walk into a surf shop and start banging the surfboards?
Yeah, well, you can come into my shop and do that. Feel free to do it in my shop. It freaks people out. No, think of your own path, though, when you've picked up a board and you're like, something about this. And, like, who's to say there isn't? And what's to say you didn't know where it came from, but you felt something? So, yeah, just following those feelings and then trying to get a little more scientific about them, because of my own fascination and trying to build something better. But I like that about surfing.
Totally. I mean, it's already inherent within our language. I was so in tune. I was so in tune with the waves. I was so in tune with my board. Maybe the board itself was, maybe you're literally in tune with the resonance of your board, and maybe that swell period was more in tune with the resonance of your board in that session too.
I have these conversations with people that know surfboards from time to time, and I cherish every single one of them, because you never know what you're going to learn. But like, I work alone and I'm always open and willing and trying to learn, but like, it's not like there's no really brotherhood of shapers where you're rubbing shoulders and chatting about what's next. You know what I mean? It's like now and again you have conversations, but I was having this conversation with, I won't name the shaper because it'll distort the story, very high level profile guy that knows surfboards really well. We all know him, we love him, and his work's been outstanding. But he was explaining my board to somebody else who had questions, and I just let him fly, because it was really fun to see how's he going to defend or answer or belittle this. And I was fine with it either way. But it was really interesting hearing somebody else's description of what EPS with S-glass and epoxy doesn't do, and then how it feels. And it was really interesting. But I think, that world or mismanagement of descriptors, meaning which resin, which blank, which fiberglass, which cloth, epoxy and EPS need to go together. Polyester can be laminated with epoxy. So it gets a little muddied, right? But his description of how epoxies feel in the water was really helpful to hear. And it made me understand what I'm trying to do and balance the boards. This was a long way of saying, I do think a board can be too lively and too sparky and too skittish maybe. But if it's got that in it, and it's tamed down enough so that you can control it, that's when you start to go, I was just so in tune. Like your timing was on. So it's like, yeah, you could build stronger boards. You could also build more lively boards. Is that really what we want, though? And you start to look at the boards that people love and, you know, put careers on the line with. Like, of course, they're talented, but there's certain things, like it wasn't too strong, it wasn't too stiff, it wasn't too supportive, it wasn't, you know, and my point is that, yeah, you don't want to, just liveliness isn't the end all. It's a balance of liveliness. So, yeah, it's a balance of all those things, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's got a lot to do also with both what we are used to in terms of what we grew up with surfing, and also what we are used to in the surfing culture itself. Because if you look at the music world, for example, you know, when a lot of that great music was recorded in LA through, you know, 70s and 60s, 70s and 80s, it was all recorded with maple drums, Gibson Les Pauls, and Fender guitars. And we got used to the sounds of those equipment. Now you walk into any recording studio, you've got Canadian maple drum kits, you've got Gibson Les Pauls, and you've got Fender Strats. If you don't have that in your studio, they're almost like you have to, right? But now that music's becoming more modern, people are using different types of guitars and different drum sounds, and it's becoming, as music's sort of becoming more broad, you know, we're using a lot of different recording equipment and styles now. And I think that's true with the surfing world too. You know, boards are being built with different equipment, and people are more accepting of these boards that feel a little bit different. And of course, they're going to look different in the way they surf because of their flex patterns and the materials that they use as well. So, music and surfing are so similar in that way.
I mean, I'm besotted in those details. I actually went to audio and engineering school and worked in recording studios. That was my whole world. Like, you know, took me around the world, actually brought me here. But the point you make of, like, that's what we're used to, and that's, you can't have that sound without using those things, and now we've got new music with new sounds, is true. But let's always think about, if we're talking about surfboards and which ones are good, like, it comes down to feeling. Like, did you like the way that felt? And if you just can't wipe the smile off your face, that's all we're after. That's all we're after. Did that feel amazing? Yep. What's working about it? I don't know. I just loved it. It's a simple way of saying, like, you're chasing smiles. And if you listen to music that you've never heard before, and something that's really big but like new, that just captivates you and resonates with you, just, I don't know what it is about this, but I love it. Same thing, right? You know, that it sparks a response to that. And I love that. I don't want to sit and explain every surfboard, and it's good to try and understand them, whether you're trying to replicate it or figure out which parts are doing what, of course. But just when it comes to people and surfboards, like, which one do you like? Which one brings the smile? Which one makes you most happy, or lets you do what you want to do most consistently? And it actually makes it quite simple then.
I think, like, if you walked into a guitar studio to purchase a new guitar, that 1970s Gibson Les Paul might feel like the best guitar simply because you know the history and the tradition that came behind it. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
So I think that our psychology affects what we think we feel a lot.
But that music that you listened to that was new, if you listened to it, you didn't watch it be played, and you like it, and then you found out it was played on something else, that didn't matter. You liked it. It's
that
like,
opens up your mind.
Exactly right. And that's why I keep coming back to, like, well, how did it feel? Because people are trying, like, oh, this board's doing that and this was, I'm like, well, how did it feel? And if they can't explain that feeling, or if they were lost for words because it was so amazing, like, just chase that. It's actually really a safe place to, like, which part do you love? I don't know, I just love this. Great. You know? Like, because it opens up an honesty of just, like, I don't know which part it is, but I like it. A lot of people can't even say which music they like or which board they like, let alone why. Like, so we're trying to be music critics or board critics, which there's a place for that, but just, like, what stopped you in your tracks? Like, when you wake up and you got to go surfing, what were you going to grab? Or what would you like to grab again? Or whatever it is, you know? But, yeah, I like that. I like that there's things that make you smile and then you get to build them. That's the goal. Which one made you smile?
I think the pros. Well, let's take an example like Jack Freestone and Josh Kerr. The fact that they've been jumping on these more sort of alternative shapes from some of the album surfboards, and just tearing the bag out of waves on these boards that we thought were down the line average surfboards for average surfers. I think that's opened people's minds, the rest of the surfing world, up to, actually maybe I could ride a fish when next time the waves are pumping. And I think it's those guys that are allowing us, like the same thing your favorite musician all of a sudden uses a different type of guitar and you don't realize it until you look into it, but you liked the song. You can't, if you've already liked the song, or if you already liked the surfing you saw, and then you realize, he wasn't on a traditional shortboard from blah blah blah, and then I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to see that in surfing.
It's funny, yeah. Well, this is fun. So, I've actually been coaching this year, and I say that with great reverence and respect for coaches, because I'm not a coach. So I don't like to assign myself the title, but the way the things worked out, this one guy he was pleased because we did a couple loose informal sessions and found some really good ground. I was able to help him, and I'd built him a few boards. No, I'd built him one board. Anyway, did a couple sessions, and he saw immediate results, and I like to know that I'm fascinated with how surfboards work, but how you need to make surfboards work is the most important thing. Like, technique's always going to be the most important thing. And then you can have fun on anything. My point is, working on what matters to somebody and how to identify what they need to know next has been infinitely rewarding. Frustrating too, but I bring it up because I've always said that the ex-pros are going to be the ones who dictate what the future of what we want to ride and how we ride it is going to be, because they come with an incredible ability and natural talent. But now you've switched out their need to earn via winning to now maybe just a need to reinvent themselves and have fun, or a loss of identity, or now I'm getting paid because I'm the cool guy with the video. So these people have talent, and now they can take that raw talent and put it onto, alternative designs that are becoming just normal now. I'm saying this, and what made me think about this story was been coaching a little bit. The last assignment I gave I'm only working with one person for this year, and the last assignment I gave was what? I would like to see you identify 3 video clips of somebody surfing that you would like to surf like. Because if you don't know what you're trying to do, if you can't be because you do that in music, I really like the way this guy plays, if we bring in the music back in, it's okay, well, if you really want to do that, you're going to have to play this guitar, and you do it like this, and you work on it, and you get it right. So we don't have a static platform, which I'm grateful for, but if you can't bring me somebody surfing that's close to something you want to do, or able to do, or able to want to do, you know what I mean? It's something that's attainable. And it's a beautiful thing, because it starts to make you look at somebody else surfing and be like, well, I want to do that. Or, nah, can't do, don't want, fine. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to define, a lot of people want to improve their surfing, but if they don't have something to aim for.
Exactly.
You've really got to talk about that and think about it, and that will forever change as you progress, but you've at least got to try and think of something.
Right.
If you're directionless, it's worse than you're better to choose a direction that's as good as you can at the moment than choose no direction at all.
Right. Which is funny though, because you'll still be having fun, and that's why it's almost disguised. But that was my point in the beginning, was what is my intention? What am I working on? What is I'm working towards something, and it's these few things, and having that intention mapped out as loose as I want to be, because I'm managing it, has really focused things out and been really rewarding. And I think it would be cute to watch video parts and see, I want to surf like this guy, but the most accurate way to do it really is I've started to notice, like, if you paddle out and you see somebody surfing in the same waves in the same lineup at that day with you, and you identify somebody doing a certain either maneuver or approach or hopefully stringing it all together, that's the best time to learn. That's the live video. Because that's where, otherwise you're watching things online and you're like, okay, well, that's nice warm water with barrels. I don't live there. So you can do it within a session too, which makes the point of needing to surf around good surfers of value.
But it doesn't even have to be that specific. Like, for example, one of your goals might be, I want to catch more waves. Well, that's nice, but how many waves? You need to, like, do you want to catch 20 waves in 1 hour? Like, I think the more you can define that, like, it's such an airy, fairy goal. I want to catch more waves. Well, how many waves do you? I think the best question then, if someone says, I want to catch more waves, you go, how many do you catch in a session? And how many do you want to catch? And that just starts to point them in the right direction. They're far more likely to catch more waves if they have a specific goal. I want to catch 20 waves in half an hour.
Right. Well, the only reason they would think that they'd want to catch more waves is they see somebody else catching, because they're out there and they're like, well, I can't catch these waves, and they start getting frustrated. If no one's catching waves, you don't get frustrated. If one guy's catching way more waves than somebody else, that's going like, wait, well, what's going on here? So it's like, there's your case study. But yeah, just having okay, what am I working on, you know? I'm fascinated by small waves. I think there's so much ground to be gained in how to surf, and it's not that you become a small wave expert. I think it's a real big takeaway that you can put into all conditions. The reason I bring it up is because it's like, there's always work to be done. You don't have to wait for good waves to be training or working on your surfing. And I like that about it, because you can look at waves that nobody else wants to ride. I surfed all by myself yesterday morning. All by myself. Had a wonderful time. Different focus, you know.
No, that was one of the biggest perspective changes in my surfing that made the most difference. Was this is back in 2016 when I interviewed Tom Carroll, and he said, because I went surfing with him, and there were these little knee-high waves that I couldn't even catch them. I just couldn't catch them. And Tom Carroll comes out and starts doing roundhouse cutbacks on these waves that I couldn't catch, and I just was like, how?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you got to look for the details.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, the details.
Yeah, he's on record saying that to surf the big waves, you got to ride the little waves because the details are then strewn together. Yeah, I mean, I love that, and yeah, so
exactly.
Inspirational. Yeah. Yeah.
You said previously before that you had thought about some things we might talk about. Is there something that came to mind?
Well, yeah, I so respect surf coaches, and that's why I was reluctant to even get into that world without formal training or I don't know. I'd use another word. I just don't know another one to use. So yeah, I've been working with people trying to help them surf better, but it's helped me understand surfing, and that's the goal, is to really understand how boards work and how to make them work. And more than anything, what happens is there's an overlap between surfers, like how surfers think, you know, because it's humans, you know. That's why it's aiming for smiles, you know what I mean? Like, working with surfers is a joy, and I knew that conversation would have, we could talk for years on that. But yeah, I think learning how to actually surf properly is the most important thing in this landscape right now. And it it can come across sort of kooky almost, but it's so important. And if you really realize that there's only a few things you need to work on at any given time, and you'll probably be working on them for the rest of your life, and break it down like that, surfing becomes, you could take the reins back within your own camp and be like, okay, I got to work on this. And that really guides one to know which kinds of boards you should be trying to ride or not trying to ride, and which kinds of conditions you should be gravitating towards, and why it probably isn't necessary to be doing all these elaborative, extravagant trips, you know.
There's a certain stigma attached to the term surf coach or surf coaching,
right?
Isn't there? And I think it's similar, in a similar way, the term therapy. Do you know what I mean? Like having a surf coach is almost like having a therapist. It's like, you know, you don't want to admit it. You feel sometimes you might feel a little bit of shame going, but it's all. I think it's only because of the history of the stigma behind it. Because if you, for example, if we were to reframe what a therapist is, rather than go to therapy, you'd be more likely to go to a psychology class to learn about human behavior. And you combine that with a little bit of self-awareness, and that's all therapy is. Who am I? What do I want? And what is a functional relationship? And how do I manage myself and others? And deal with others' human behavior.
That's exactly what the surf coaching is. Like that. Who am I? What do I want? How do I relate with others? And what is it that I want out of this relationship? That's exactly what your surfing is. So yeah. Sorry to cut you off. That was hilarious. I was like, you could have interchanged. And that's what we said when we started. Yeah. I love it.
Yes, and I think sometimes people come into surfing for the therapeutic nature of surfing as well.
And that's good. Like, everyone's got their own path, and they'll very quickly realize that, wow, this thing's powerful if I want to really get deep in it. And it's like anything. And the deeper you go, the more you start to see. It's like, but let's go take depth out and just go back to fascination. Why do some people start surfing and go away and thought that was cute and try something else, and other people can't let it go and it changes their life? Well, they were more fascinated. So that's, once again, like, which parts of surfing are you fascinated about? And if you've seen a part that brings balance or leverage and helps in the rest of your life, because it's all working together, you'll never let it go, or you'll hold on to it really preciously and with great care, because of what it's bringing, because life's hard, and there's a time when that relationship with what surfing is and what it brings it's radical. And I see that because I see it when I work on boards for people, when you have these long conversations. I really treasure them, long conversations, and I don't even have to make it up. Like, just 3 or 4 boards ago, it was somebody recovering from cancer and, new lease on life and back healthy, and always surfed and had to stop and coming back to surfing, and it's like every day was a gift, just a new perspective. And it was such a joy because they knew how precious every day was now, just because one forgets until you're up against the fence, So yeah, I just think that surf coaching, or how to surf, is so important if you're really going to take this thing serious. If you're really fascinated about this, and it's it's wonderful. I wish I just had more time to ride more boards. I've been riding so many different boards, and I just don't have enough time. But it's not because I don't have any time to do it. I've been doing it and I love it and I wanted to keep doing it, but it takes it out of just being in the Donald Brink show too. And I think I've been loving doing that, Oh, what's somebody else doing? What's somebody else? How does this feel? And spending time with people, it's so fun, Yeah.
I like that term, fascination. That's a great way to put it, because I think often we become obsessed. Now, if you're not a competitive professional surfer, I don't think obsession's if you are a competitive professional surfer, I think obsession is the right word. But if it's not your career, then I think fascination is a much better word, and it encompasses your relationship with surfing.
So that came from, I learned that from a real wise mentor, and it came out of a discussion on business principle. And he said to me, I don't hire people or work with people that are passionate. I want to work with people who are fascinated. And I thought about it. I'm still thinking about it. So don't quote me, because this is what we're wrestling with, these concepts. We're not telling you what to do. We're just asking these questions. So the question is it better to be passionate, or is it better to be fascinated? And his theory was, fascination will be endlessly intriguing. Passion, you can burn out and start making really brash or irresponsible decisions. So if you're fascinated with surfing, you will maintain its balance because of the joy it brings. You surf too much, you're irresponsible. You surf too little and you get out of whack, and then you come home grumpy, irresponsible. So that's why the best word I've found yet is fascination. And then hearing his point on that was like, ooh, that's powerful. Because he's looking at it on a hiring strategy, Yeah, you don't want to be obsessed. That's out of balance.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great analogy. It would be the same too, like if you met a desirable romantic partner. If you're obsessed, it's probably not going to go well. They're probably not going to like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cute. It's cute at first glance.
Yeah, if you're respectfully fascinated, that's such a better way to... It's a powerful word because it is a powerful word. There's so much to it.
I would like to revisit this in months and see if this holds up, because I have been wrestling with this for so long, and the words matter. Because look at this, we're wrestling with them, but I think, okay, expanded on this conversation. Which boards are you fascinated with? Which surfer are you fascinated with? Oh, how do you want to surf? And like you sort of reverse engineer it through a fascination. Like, yeah, that guy's ripping. I don't want to do his. Well, I can't. Okay, which, you know what I mean? It guides you really well, but I'd love to, yeah, well, let the listeners, man, everyone run their own experiment and then go and sit with your friend and hash it out. But I think this concept of being fascinated, and like I say, if it's not true in one discipline and doesn't hold up through all the others, then it's probably not true, like that's just age-old sound advice. But, watching my kids grow up and you don't ever want to like micromanage them in what they're going to be. You just want to see what are they into, and you morally guide them, of course, but you really just want them to find their little groove, and it'll be with what they're fascinated by, and then you put a little feel in there, and whew, unreal.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's a great word.
Pretty good. This is the best I've got yet, but it's helpful.
Yeah, no, I used to be obsessed with surfing. And I realized that it gave surfing too much power over me.
Mm-hmm. It's out of balance.
And I developed a better relationship with surfing. And now I am still incredibly fascinated with it.
Yeah.
But I get to be fascinated with surfing when I want to be fascinated with it, and in my own terms.
Well, you're cultivating. Oh, I love it. Yeah. So that was something that I was excited to unpack with you. Just because it's not what to do, it's how to think about things, and nothing's changed except the way you're looking at it, and that could bring such incredible depth to anybody, because they're sitting where they're sitting with whatever they're going through, and they can maybe take that, and it's been helpful for me. And then it's like I said, and then working with somebody on what's the next for their surfing, and going through that sort of coaching situation, and I've been working with a few young shapers too, and like not working on boards, but just being there to have the conversation. Like, all right, like what are you working on? And looking at rails and rocker, and it's fun. You learn, and you don't learn necessarily about what they are working on. It's just the way they see things, the way you see things, the way they respond, the way you respond at best rather than react. It's just pretty fun. All within the surfing world. I love it.
It's and I like that too. You could be fascinated with a type of surfboard too, and that could guide your surfing as well. Fascination, great word.
Yeah.
Something I've never really had an obsession with, but I've always been fascinated with and by, is music. I was never that obsessed with it, but I've always been fascinated with it, and I've learnt a lot about surfing through my journey of learning the guitar and just being fascinated with different musicians and styles of music and different instruments too, and realizing being fascinated by the drums has helped me to be a better guitarist and things like that. And I really like the music world because fascination is almost more acceptable than obsession in the music world too. And I think there's a lot to learn about surfing from the music world, especially in terms of like different genres. Whereas if we think of the WSL and that performance surfer being pop music, which is essentially targeted towards the masses and is as popular as it can be, but some people don't like pop music. Some people like slow jams or jazz or house music, and that's, I think, surfing and I think you you don't have to be a really good pop musician to be a really good jazz musician. Whereas, someone like Devin Howard, he's really good at jazz. Do you know what I mean? But he's not going to go out and get barreled on a 511.
I dare say he probably could.
Well, he probably could, yeah. And same with great musicians.
Right. Well, people that play jazz can.
Their skills are transferable, but
Exactly.
there's no embarrassment or there's no stigma like they have to play pop music.
Right.
And if they want to make money out of it, it's different. But if they're just doing it as a pastime, so I think there's a lot to learn from music in the surfing world. You have a music background. How do you feel about that line of thinking?
Yeah, that's a whole can of worms. I'll tell a story. I was sitting recording a session in Cape Town, South Africa. Huge jazz scene there, incredible musicians, just incredible. And we were doing this session, and they brought session guys in to play on this record. Gavin Marshall was playing drums, Buddy Wells was on the saxophone. Two of Cape Town's best. I mean, you're kind of awestruck just seeing them, let alone engineering a session, and they're the nicest people you've ever met too. No vibes. But I was sitting there, and it was it was like I had a producer's role on this record, just the way it was, and you're sitting there together making musical decisions as you tracking things, and I'll never forget. It came to a point, and we stopped the track, and Buddy Wells looked into the recording booth. I'm sitting there. He looks over at Gavin, and I can't remember exactly what the detail was, but should we go to the C minor 7th after the bridge or not? And it was something that I could hear a difference, but I was part of a decision that I was like, I don't understand music like these people. They were the best, I was sparring with the wrong, but I was out of my depth, and it felt terrible. It felt so uncomfortable. But the reason I felt so uncomfortable because I'd work at the studio till 3 o'clock, and then at 3:30 I'd go and sit and watch Dave Van Ginkel's Shape, because I'd earned a space to watch him, and that's how I was learning. So I'm sitting in this musical decision, and the next stop is shaping tools. And as much as I was out of my depth then too, I just felt like I could understand this endlessly better because it just seemed more baked in. And I'd made some radical life choices to be that involved and dedicated to music. I mean, gosh, I'd gone to school, and this was my job. But I remember that moment and going, man, I think I could be pretty well trained, but I'm not very talented on this. And not to say that I was more talented on the tools, but it just felt like there was a little more. You could keep polishing that, and it'd be a little less upstream. And so I kind of walked away from music for years, many years. Radically, almost like to a fault. Looking back, to a fault. I never used to listen to music. Music would be on, but I wouldn't go and choose a record to put on. I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to things while I was working. It would usually be podcasts or like things I was trying to learn, audiobooks, things I was trying to learn from, and then the music came back, and it came back slowly, just through picked up a guitar again, started dabbling, and that was really fun to bring the guitar back, because it's so portable and it's easy, and then I grew up playing guitar, so that was fun. But it was just because I was enjoying it. It wasn't because I was either getting paid to play or had to be showing up to play or be somewhere, which was always part of what life was. But I was always a drummer, and so last year, the short story is I got drums again. And now they're part of my everyday life. They're in the way. They're in my shaping board. They're physically in the way. But I feel meanness that it brings to be weak in the English language, but that I feel meanness when I just have headphones on and listening to something play and just tap along for a few bars and get back to work is it's invaluable. And so my relationship with music, I didn't manage well, but there needed to be that sort of cold start for me. But looking back, it was too radical. I lost many years of both just being in love with music. I didn't have to be so radical, but I wanted to be so focused, because you want to give something everything you got, and one day look back and go like, man, I didn't kind of phone it in. I gave it everything I got, and not that I've arrived or anything. I just bringing that balance back. So that's my story about music, and I'm endlessly fascinated by it. And actually, every single board, when somebody orders a board, they recommend an album, and it guides us through the project. And it sounds cheesy, but it came from trying to decide on colors, and colors are frequencies that enter one's eyes, and music's a frequency that enters one's ears, and it just helps put you on the same page. And the rail and rocker and those design changes aren't affected. I'm going to make those the way I'm going to make them, but with the aesthetics and the overall feeling of the project. And so what happens is people send albums that some of the stuff I absolutely hate, but I give them time of day, and I spend a week with an album while you're building the board, and I've learned to fall in love with things that I never would have listened to, because it became something that I had to, with respect to that project. And now there's an album, I will hear a song on the radio and it'll take me back 14 months and be, oh, I wonder how that Twin Fin's going, or I wonder how that longboard is, and so that's my connection with what music was and what it is now. And man, I love it.
That's very cool. It's very deep, very, very arty, and I like that, and it makes sense. All your time in music and playing music and recording it, what did it teach you about surfing?
That's a fantastic question, and it's never been asked. But it got posed to me in the strangest of ways just a few weeks ago. And this is what it means. Somebody walked in to my shaping bay, and as I said, the drums, they're in the way. They're in the way, but it's great. And they said, wow, that's cool, you play drums. You must come in and just pound your frustration out. That's cool, man. And I looked at them. I did answer, but they just didn't get it. But straight away I was like, no, it's not about getting the anger out. It's about getting your timing in. Because I feel that. This wasn't a rehearsed response. It was like, no, this isn't about banging out the jitters. This is about getting in tune, getting in the groove. And coming up on last Christmas, my wife's uncle, really talented keys player, and he's just retired, and so he's putting the bands together. So our old Uncle Jim, he's jamming, and so anyway, short story is we were going to play Christmas carols at the family dinner, but they're full jazz cats. So he was like, hey, you should play with us. So yeah, we had sax, keys, guitar. I was on drums, and but all Christmas carols are real swinging. So like if you don't grow up playing swinging jazz, it's kind of you got to be on it, So I was swinging my head off, like coming into December there, just every day, just swinging and listening to jazz and trying to keep up. And my point is that getting your timing in is exactly what you need to do when you surf. And sometimes I'll go out there and you're like, when you're out of rhythm and you're like, nah, this just not connecting today. If you're in a heat and that happens, it's like, well, the clock's running down. How quickly can you reconnect and then win or make it through, whatever it is? But if you're just in a surf that day, do you walk away going, oh, I was out of rhythm today? Always the challenge to how do I reset? How do I recenter, get your timing back in? For me, is how it feels. It's the same. It's like when you're just not grooving and then it clicks. There seems to be an overlap there, Mike. And to me, it's timing.
Totally. I mean, that's one thing that no matter what style of music we're talking about, right? No matter the tempo, the style, or who's playing, if the group or the musician's not in time and in rhythm with the music, it's just not going to work. It's not music. It's almost not music.
It's a noise. Yeah.
You could take the same noise and shift it an eighth of a beat, and boom, now it's music.
Yeah. I think that's what Tom Carroll was doing on those little waves. He saw the timing from one little pocket to the next, and there's a silver thread that connects them all. And if you can identify it and you're able to do it, if your knees and back bend in that way, it's quite amazing. Because when you surprise yourself in a session, you're like, whoa, I pulled that off or something. Like, it shows that you can do it. It's just being able to do it on a consistent basis. And I think that's the biggest thing in the surfing is, in anyone's work or path, is a consistency, so that you're able to actually mess with the ingredients and dance with them. But yeah, that the concept of timing is endlessly fascinating, because you can feel it, and then you get to enjoy it and then mess with it.
Interesting. Yeah, and for a musician, it's not unusual. In fact, I would argue it's necessary that as a guitarist, you practice your scales, learn a bit of theory. As a drummer, do some work with the metronome, practice a few rudiments.
Yeah.
In order to play music.
Right.
There's practice and then there's music. And your practice informs and helps you be more musical and get in the zone with the group as well. And that brings it back to to me, that's why you should have a surf coach.
I agree. And I think the reality is you don't need a surf coach if you were that able to be in tune with intention. In other words, if you could be like self-study and I think this is what I need to work on, and go out there and be accountable to yourself to do it. But most people, that's asking a lot. So to have somebody to hold your hand and say, I see where you're at. Look at the video. This is what you need to work on. I mean, to do that weekly, if you really want to be a student, you'll have incredible gains. But even if you just have a few sessions and know that for the next 10 years, I need to be paying attention to that, like that Achilles heel concept, that is hugely, hugely beneficial. And I don't understand why friends that surf together aren't able to do that for each other more frequently. Does that make sense? Like, when last did you hear two surf friends being like, hey man, like you're really not doing what you said you should be learning, or you really need to learn this, and then watch each other? And like, when last did you hear somebody in the water ask somebody else how to do something?
Yeah, that doesn't happen often. And to bring it back to music, if you're jamming with 4 other people and someone's out, the whole band stops and they look, let's start that again, bro, you're just a little bit out of time. And it's perfectly acceptable to do that as well,
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let's start that again. I'll count us in, and then, okay, now we're grooving. It's acceptable in the music world. It's not so acceptable in the surfing world yet.
But it's because you don't surf together. Surfing's not a selfish, but it's a
true.
solo activity. So that's why you have to be intentional in and of itself to do that homework. Those people that go to surf coaching and then never listen? It's a waste of time. See, it's like, okay, if you're not going to put on your big boy shoes and actually do what we're talking about, like, this is science. Got to get low and stay low.
But you're right, you don't need a surf coach. Like, it's like for example, I've sort of I took a long break off the guitar, actually, and I've rediscovered it recently. And I've been fascinated with a character called Rick Beato. I don't know if you've heard of him before. He's used to be a music producer in Atlanta and is now just making a bunch of YouTube videos. Now, his music theory knowledge is incredible. He's an incredible guitarist. He knows music theory inside and out, all the scales, all the modes, blah, blah, blah. And he just gives this information away for free through YouTube videos. Now, I have zero background in music theory. I kind of understand the circle of fifths. That's about it. Mm-hmm. I watch some of his videos, and most of the time I have no idea what he's talking about. But I'm fascinated by watching them, and I've become such a better guitarist. It rubs off. that rubs off. So I think that, if you're not in a position where you want to or you can get a surf coach, just watch surfing. Watch the educational videos that a bunch of these surf coaches have put online. Even if you don't fully get what they're saying, just be fascinated, be entertained, be visually stimulated, and just know that probably more of it is going to sink in than you realize.
I think the whole industry is kind of looking around to be like, okay, who's going to run point guard on being this, like, technique's the most important thing? And I personally feel like some of those articles Stab's been writing lately has been incredibly well done and I think well received. But, they're basically breaking down into surf. I think last week's one was reading the rim, and just the concept was like, when you paddle out, like, just pay attention to what's going on around you. Saying that in an artful, tactful manner it needs to be said. But if you're wanting to learn, hearing that and doing it, it's going to be incredibly helpful. And yeah, it's fascinating. You can do whatever you want with it, surfing, and that's what's wonderful, because there's so much to be done and so much joy to be had. And yeah, if you really want something out of the surfing thing, it's right there for the taking, which is so cool. And I wouldn't have always believed that as much as I have lately, and the confidence comes from knowing that you can do it in small waves. Because otherwise it's like it's a cool guys club and that's limited with access to where you live and how you get there. No, I think it's all the water.
Yeah, that is a big thing. Actually, you're right, because a lot of the surfing videos you watch, it's all, including a lot of the educational stuff, it's all based around head high or bigger good waves, and it's just not what we surf all the time. And even if it's happening, that's where the crowd is, so sometimes you don't even want to go there anyway.
Case in point. Yep. Yeah, the future is going to be like finding, the better you surf, the less waves you need to be able to have fun. But that's the thing, is your proficiency is if you can be consistent enough to go in there and interact, dance, have timing with the ocean, that feels good. I mean, yeah, of course it'd be nice to surf good sized waves, but those will come. There'll be a bigger swell one day. But in between, like, if you're in connection with the ocean, staying on rail on a turn, no matter how big the wave is, that's like, Dane Gadauskas to me is the best pioneer of being able to surf the same way from 1 to 10 feet. It like really kind of looks similar. Most of your favorite surfers you'll see, they'll do that. And to me it's fascinating because I've spent so much time with him in tiny waves at blown out Sano or something, and basically just going to get wet. But we had other intentions, like working on certain things, sometimes a board, but usually just a stance or arm placement. And it sounds silly, but it's not, because you know how powerful it is.
I got fascinated I bought an 11-foot glider.
Yes.
And just because I got so frustrated with the crowds in California, I was like, I just want to go surfing when it's knee high and there's no one out, or I'm going to sit right on the inside at first point and just catch all the waves no one else is catching. So I got this big board and just I've surfed nothing but that board. Ended up surfing it in all conditions. I learned how to surf it in big waves. It's so good for your surfing to get in touch with those boards. And that reminds me of a board that you shaped a 13-footer, right? Was it 13 foot or something?
Yeah, I've done a bunch of big ones. Did a 1311 for Dane, and I did him a 14.3.
14.3, that's huge.
Yeah, that was a good board. That was the Chindrail Kook box, wooden, hollow. Good board, that. Very good.
Did you surf it too?
Yeah, there's actually some footage of, like, we put a video out of making the board, and then actually surfed it with him first day, first session. That board demanded an attention to what was going on, obviously, because it was A-game stuff, and the waves were only chest high at best, like waist to chest. But the speed, you connected the dots. You were going so fast that you would come up on people, and we try to be out of a crowd, obviously, but you would come up on chopped sections, things, people, beaches, so quickly. It was a really unique experience. He loves that board. He rides it a lot. where he's living now. But yeah, I just bought a couple blanks and I'm working on some bigger boards coming up fairly soon. I have a 12.6 that's always on hand that yeah, so many people have borrowed that board, and it's fun because it's not the kind of board you really want to buy, but it's fun to ride. But it opens up what surfing can feel like, and it's best because you're not having to want, or probably don't want to feel that every day, but you always know you're going to go back to whatever you used to or like, and it just opens up a new perspective, that much waterline length. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it taught me so much about surfing my shortboard, learning to ride that big 11-footer, because it is, you've got to predict where you're going to be so much further into the future, and where the wave's going to, and because it's got no rocker, you have to paddle in at the right angle, otherwise you're gone. And it was such a great board, and I've even been barreled on that board, it's just, and it taught me so much about surfing.
Well, they feel unique because if you're getting barreled, that means that there was 6.5 feet of board getting barreled. That's in a part of the wave that you wouldn't normally have a board stuffed in, and it's like kind of like nose riding too. Just that feeling of how forward you are of what the wave's doing to the rest of the board. Yeah, just feeling those things and learning them. It's not learning them, feeling them. Is a better way to say it because it's endlessly fascinating.
14, what did you say? 14.3.
14.3 that board was, yeah.
That's a lot of surfboard. Can you get blanks that big, or how did you?
That board was wooden. Yeah, it was like the kook box, like the box construction, but then I glued up the bottom and shaped the bottom into a chined rail, so I had meat basically there, and then hollowed that out and put bulkheads in. But yeah, but the big ones I always glue up blanks myself, and you're joining. I wouldn't say it's wasteful, it's just the only way to get there is to use really large blanks and join them. I really think it's really important to frustrate yourself or try and ride really, really tiny boards, but only so that to make sure you're going back to your normal boards, but for the same exercise of like just feeling they fit into the waves in a different way, and you just walk away with a fascination for different parts of it. It's free, man. You can paddle out on a boogie board. I don't know. Just figure it out. Just run the exercises.
Yeah, interesting. Because that last year I spent in Malibu, all I surfed was my 11-foot glider and my 5.3 fish.
Mm.
I went from those two extremes. And then there was a few times where the waves really turned on and I jumped on the shortboard and I was like, oh, wow. I can just read. My technique obviously hadn't really necessarily improved, I don't think, but the way that I read waves and my just confidence to be in different parts of the waves, because those two boards had contrasted the lines and the spaces you can occupy on a wave. I just felt so much more confident in where I was.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost like I wonder if it's kind of like if you learn to get a really nice sound out of some old shitty oversized drums and maybe some really small terrible drum kits, and then when you jump on a beautiful drum kit, you've just got more control and more scope for different sounds on that beautiful kit because you've been messing around on other instruments. Maybe it could be a music analogy.
Well, when I got back on the drums, I was like, man, I had to, because we had the Christmas thing coming up and we got to play. I was like, Uncle Jim was like, well, you ready? So I scrambled. I got to buy a drum kit, and just neighbor was selling something. Bought a crappy kit. It was terrible. I was like, oh well, it'd been so many years. I think it had been, if it wasn't 13, it was 17 years that I hadn't sat behind a drum kit. So I'm talking about like sticker shock. You just like, whoa, just felt so familiar but not, But my point is kind of grooving out in that kit. And then what was funny is actually my neighbor down at my shop, 2 doors down, he's actually a really good drummer. So it's like full session guy. He's incredible. But he walked past my door and he heard me playing on the janky kit, and the next 2 days later he rocked up and he's like, "Yeah, I heard you playing that kit. No, take it back. He recorded a video standing outside my door of me playing, and he texted to me, and so in other words, now you know I heard you playing. And then 2 days later, he showed up and he's like, "Hey, I'm selling one of my kits. I'll sell you this kit." I was like, because he was like, "Oh, this guy, like, he's actually into it." You know what I mean? But then sitting behind like a nicer quality set of drums, it was like, yeah, you have so much control because it's like it's sounding like something that can be finessed, I guess. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
Also, I wonder if like learning to swing a beat, when you go back to playing a straight beat, you have a better sense of timing overall, because you've spent some time with jazz and you've learned to manipulate and go back and forth on the beat. Then you come back, I'm going to play some straight rock, and now I'm in control. I can be slightly behind the beat and sound more groovy or whatever.
Yeah, you can really mess with it. For me, it was like a discipline of, okay, I haven't played for so long, so what you want to do is try and start the right way. In other words, playing traditional grip. But the trick with drums is good drummers are able to play really softly. It's like, why is that guy so loud? He sucks. But, like there were little tricks that I just kept messing with stuff till it started to feel better. But I was playing traditional grip and as softly as I could. And because I was coming back to it fresh, I was like, that was the discipline. Every day, all day, like that wasn't getting lazy, right? And those habits were very helpful because I had this kind of reset. And in that particular situation, it was sitting up way higher than I'd ever used to sit, hike the chair all the way up, and it just that body language let you be sort of light over the pans, over the pots and pans, and ba. And then I spoke to a drummer friend, incredible drummer, and I said to him, I was like, "Man, this is what I've been finding." He's like, no, that's a real thing. I was like, "Really?" And he told me about, if you go look at all the old jazz drummers from back in the day, I forget what he said they were sitting on, but there were these tall cone-shaped, and now people are screaming at this mic right now, just going like, I can't remember what it, but they were basically really high. They weren't chairs, they were like stools or something. They weren't bar stools, but there was something that they were all famous for sitting on, and it was put them up real high. And that made all the difference that you could have this control. It worked for me, but that was like kind of a cool, like, that does feel different. Felt good.
Yeah, the finesse is the key. Cause even when you play the drum kit as quiet as you can, it's still really loud.
Yeah,
it's a loud instrument. An acoustic drum kit isn't a loud instrument. There's no way around it. If you're using wooden sticks, it's just...
It's obnoxious, I know, yeah. That's why it's at the shop.
It's not obnoxious, but it can be.
You're right. Yeah, that's why it's at the shop. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about something. What do you think of this concept? You hear it often, is like most people ride boards that are too small for them, right? And we've talked about the help of riding something extreme like the 11-footers and the little fishies and stuff, but like I've really watched how people start their surfing, and it's all on the soft top stuff, and it's like 8-foot thick bulky rails, a lot of volume, all those things. But what would you say from your experience watching people learn to surf? I see their value in having somebody be on a very supportive, see how I switched the word there, big shortboard. And the reason I say that is because I don't think that the mid-length is something that you graduate from wavestorm to mid-length if you're trying to do performance surfing, or if somebody's battling on a quote-unquote sexy shortboard. What's your comment on putting them, say, onto a 6-7 bulky, basically like a 230-pound gosh performance shortboard? Where's your feedback on that? Because those boards don't look sexy, but man, I've been making some hideous looking bulky boards, but they're narrow and chipped out in the right places, and I'm finding that, like, man, more people should be riding this. But they look terrible, but they feel great. But they can get in the way so long as you're not trying to do the right thing on them and like frustrate yourself and then go back to your, chipped out daily. But What's your thought on that? I've been waiting to ask.
For the absolute beginner, you mean?
No, people that they're graduating now,
I agree. I think the ideal progress, I think, learn to catch the white water on a 9-foot soft top. Then as soon as you can catch one or two green waves on that soft top, go down to an 8 or a 9-foot hard board. As soon as you can learn to catch green waves on that 8 or 9-foot hard board, then just come down and just start working your way down. And I think if you arrive at an oversized performance shortboard, that's great for that advanced beginner or that early intermediate. I think that's the right board to be on. And I've been watching some of those. So there's an Instagram account. What's it called? Pulse Surf, I think, where it's got a lot of footage of the older pros when they're on those big long. I love the way they surf them. Just the longer boards, just the more drawn out turns, and like even good surfers on those boards. I kind of miss that almost. So I think, yes, it's a good surfboard for people to be on. Is that the oversized shortboard for sure? There's a guy in Oxnard, I think, up there somewhere, who specializes in Proctor. You heard the shape of Proctor?
Yeah, Proctor. Yeah.
I know he makes a lot of those, the oversized shortboards.
Yeah, it's the reason I think about it so deeply is because it's like, trends come and go, and that's great, and it's beautiful that we've got such a variety of surfcraft to choose from and enjoy. But you don't want to make something that is never going to be able to be surfed. And sometimes you look at a design that's popular out and you're just like, how is anyone ever supposed to actually unlock this board with good technique? Let alone with poor technique. Is this promoting good surfing? Very, very adamant that we need to be designing boards that... I'm not saying everything should be difficult to ride. I'm saying with appropriate technique, it should come alive radically. Because it's... once again, I can make it stronger. I can make it last longer.
I see what you're saying. So you're coming at the perspective of, yeah. I agree with that, as long as that's the person's goal.
I think that should be every manufacturer's goal. Like, this will work, but these are the rules. Not to be a police about it, but like sometimes you see a design and you're like, as I'm asking you with your coach hat, like surely you look at that and you're like, I see what they're not doing, but I don't think you could do anything to make that board stay on rail through whatever.
Yeah.
Do you see the rub there?
Right, yeah.
And it's funny because it's like, well, yeah, of course you're going to catch more waves and you're going to have more fun, but it's not actually fun. It's false. There's a diminishing return.
Yeah, the worst thing is when you see someone on a board like that, yet they have the goal of surfing on rail and they refuse to change boards. It's just like, I just can't help you. You can't be my client. That's what you have to do.
Not listening. Can't help. Yeah.
Yep.
That's the science, and I like that there's hard rules because that's how waves work and this is how boards fit into them. But if that's not happening, it's a rub there.
If you literally don't weigh enough or you don't have big enough feet to get that surfboard on rail, it feels nice to have all that support, but it's not in line with what you want to do, what you're telling me you want to achieve. But yeah, I think there has to be a point where if you do want to learn to surf on rail, then you're going to have to eventually jump on a board that in a way forces you to have to do that. Yeah, because there's a certain, you get to a point and there's a certain type of board that just won't, it's just going to plow water unless it's on rail.
Right, yeah. There's the old bicycle analogy coming in. I like that. Yeah, it's, if you're trying to do the right thing and then you're frustrated because it won't let you, then you switch and it lets you. Don't switch again. You stay there because it's letting you do what you're supposed to be doing. And that's like, what's your intention? In other words, what are you supposed to be doing? And then are you doing it? Like it's as simple as those two things, but it's awkward and it's fussy, even like right now to discuss, but it's so blatant and it's the low-hanging fruit for everyone to work on. It's really cool. I'm talking to myself, That's the experiments I'm running.
I'm just thinking out loud, but I'm wondering if you built a surfboard that it has a lot of support the type of board where you can just surf flat on the wave and go straight. But then if you wanted to surf it on rail, so this board would have a very straight rocker, a lot of surface area. But if you wanted to surf it on rail, it has enough flex to start to get a little bit of rocker if you were to put it on rail.
Interesting, yeah.
Because to me, that's what a soft top, especially a well-used soft top, is. Like I can take my 9.6 out there and with a client and get them to catch the whitewater, and then when my surf lesson's finished, I can paddle out the back and just hook a mean bottom turn and snap it in the pocket. Simply because the board flexes so much. It's got nothing to do with the rest of the design elements of the board. It's a fat pig. But because it flexes so much, because it's an old soft top, I can just get really low, grab the rail. It might not be a pretty bottom turn, but it's an on-rail bottom turn that fires me up to the pocket.
Right.
There's
your rocker. You got back into the curve, yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's some play with that, with quite a thinly glassed board. Now that board might not last very long, but maybe it helps a surfer in a 6 month. Board might last only 6 months, because it would just fall apart reasonably quickly. I imagine a board that would flex that much that was fiberglass, but it might serve a very good purpose.
I built one years ago that was there was zero resin or glass on it. I shaped it and then I painted it with this like a house sealant. And you'd paddle over a wave and it would like stay sucked to its wetted surface. It would flex in and over any undulation. It was a full noodle. But it was so delicate, and it was a reject blank, and it wasn't so much that I set out on a wasteful project. It was like, oh, this will be interesting, and it really was. But then I surfed it in some decent waves one day. Mark Jeremias was running up the beach. He's the guy that filmed One California Day and many other movies. But he was running up the beach, and he saw me take off on a wave, and the whole thing fell in half. And he was like, what were you riding? And then he saw the board, and he was so disappointed that he didn't get to see it doing what he could tell it had been doing, you know. But yeah, I felt what you're feeling to the extreme. That was fun.
Even a poly board that you don't put not quite enough catalyst or hardener in it, you know, and the glass stays kind of soft.
Gummy. Oh, interesting.
I don't know. Just thoughts, thinking out loud. Because I think that's why, you know, even like you see what Jamie O'Brien does on a soft top. I mean, I just think that flex pattern of a soft top is so forgiving.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're riding the board. You're not riding the core with the hard shell. So the whole thing, it's a whole different recipe, you know. Yeah. Interesting. I've been using those S-wings to like learn a board. I really feel like those fins are amazing, but the fact that you can change them because they're a fin system is what the beauty is. And I put them in board, paddled out, and it lets you feel the board in a certain way. Put other fins back in, and you learn to ride the board on a better line. It makes you surf the good line, but it's not like if you didn't have the fins in this board, the board wouldn't work kind of thing. It's not. I feel like it's such a good switch out. I mean, I love riding them, but I've found that putting them in certain boards helps me learn that board. That's been really...
What's the fin called, sorry?
Oh, those S-wings.
S-wing.
Yeah, the French company from Guétari. You've seen them. They're real radically raked back, skinny on the tip. That's what Tom Curran rides in those experimental boards, and you've seen them.
Okay, really quite a flexy fin.
Very much so. But they do that. It's like... They're like cheat codes, not because they're cheating. It's like what they do is they highlight where the board's lighting up, and it's because you feel the fins hold into turns. It's almost like you're feeling the board flex, but you're feeling the fins bend. But that highlights what that board's line is really supposed to be. Been really fun little experiment. And then you put normal fins back in and see if you can ride the same line, and because it shows you that the board wants to be there. Yeah, that's been fun lately, trying that.
I never thought of that. Yeah, okay, so the fins. Some really flexible fins.
Oh, yeah.
What's the board you're working on at the moment? What surfboard are you shaping at the moment?
I mean, I'm always working on a few things, but right now I'm in the depth of a very, very tiny wave design. I actually designed it for Japan. I was working on a project of sending over a batch of boards, like an exclusive collection, and it's really a combination of a bunch of boards over the years, some elements that resonated well from certain things, but it was the first time I put it all together. So it's nothing new except for one or two elements that I'd never done on a board before. But trying to pick out, like, well, this really worked and this stems off of that and we can't do without that, and sort of put it all together in this new package. I made the third one today. I've tested the other two and finding some very good results. The problem is, well, it's not a problem, but the results have been, the board feels like nothing I've ever ridden, which could sound wonderful, except for it's like when you get back on a normal board, it feels so slow and nothing coming back at you, like no feedback, which would, you could end the argument saying, well, then just don't ride anything else. But the point is to stay sharp and focused on the tiniest of waves so that you can transition back to normal boards. But I want the lines of your surfing to be the familiar part, not the sensation of how the board felt.
How short are we talking?
5 3.5, and then 5 5.5, and then today's, those were both asymmetrical, very asymmetrical. And then today, I don't want to build it symmetrically because I think I'm going to lose some gains, but I had to do it to see what it looks like, which sounds silly because I could have just drawn it, but I work in full scale and it was important. I was like, no, let's look at this in full scale. Heaven forbid they ask for symmetrical versions, but it might, and then I can say yes or no. But I think this is what it should look like if we did. So yeah, the little one is really good, but it's so wide and it's getting so much lift is what you need in these tiny waves. But as soon as it gets past waist high, it's uncontrollable. You're along for the ride, unless you stitch it together perfectly, and then it's like the craziest memory and you're going so fast. So maybe it's just about spending more time on it. The best part about it is that, like, you really have to have your back foot back. It's got these crazy fins in it, and it makes you stand in the right place and draw the right line. So those boxes, I'm pretty confident. I put a couple other people on it, and it looks silly. I'm not fooling. It looks, from what it looks like. But then also, okay, well, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to ride these little waves. And then watching a few people just have a go and, wow, kind of turning heads like, wow, that worked very well. So following the smiles. Yeah. So I'm working on that. I'm really happy with the one so far. The reality is I'm probably going to be chipping away at this for years and just keep trying to make it better, try to make it better. It's hard though, because it's glassed in fins. You can imagine a keel fin with the big cutout in the middle, and the fins go from an 80-20 leading edge into a reverse. It's almost like a quad in a keel. So you're breaking water in between them, and it's getting this little real estate that gets minimized to the top. So you can come up and drift the fins through the top turn because you're going through the break of the area, and then jam them back. And not to say I want to be just drifting fins instead of staying on rail, but you can push the board sideways and then push back down and make a section that there wasn't placed to do a turn, and then hike out all the way and do a long figure 8 roundhouse and bounce off the foamy. So yeah, I think it's just about controlling and matching where the board's got power and how much feedback's coming back at you. And it's exciting because I can dumb it down really easily. Dumbing it down meaning putting less feedback coming back at one to make it less of a wild horse. The goal is to see, I'd like it to perform as well as we can in these tiny waves, and if I can get it up to about a shoulder high so that it's got a bigger medium. Because if it's only for, knee-high waves, that's too nuanced. I want it to be a little broader. I surfed one at Lowers this weekend. Had a good session. 3 like really good proper waves, and the board felt really good. So it was nice. It felt very different out there compared to the other waves, but that wave's such a nice canvas. So that was a treat. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds exciting and innovative. It's
to
see the result.
It's fun because there's like just certain things that you can't do without, and then certain things are like, well, we've learned this before. You can't do that. Not that you can't do it. It's just like, no, okay. Are you willing to are you willing to be precious with some ideas, but then edit them too? You're like, nope, can't have that. It's not going to work. We know. But what if we did it like this? Nope, not going to work. So you kind of you got to hold yourself honest to the decisions within the design. And yeah, so far it's good. It's too wild and too wide and out of control, but we're balancing it. So yeah, I'm stoked.
Well, just before we wrap up, tell us your website.
Yeah, the website, actually about to be redoing that. Been working on that, so that'll look new soon. Everything's too complicated. This is too much stuff, and that's what it needed to be for the longest of time. But brinksurf.com, BRINKSURF, that's where you go. And yeah, I think it's I've taken a break from podcasting lately. Not that I haven't been recording, but been working on putting series together so that they can drop in little collections. So I've actually been recording a bunch, just haven't been putting things out, been working on boards. Just I take breaks from putting things out just because I'm busy working on them, and sometimes it's nice just to be making stuff and not showing or sharing it. And that's what we've been doing that, so it's good.
Cool. Well, I'll put links to that in the show notes. And last question for you is, open-ended question is, where do you see the future of surfing?
Oh, I love this question. I was going to answer it in just a succinct bite, but that wouldn't fit the format here. I think surfing goes through trends. There's things that are hip and cool and things that work, and then they sort of lose fashion. But like I said earlier, like, is this good for surfing? Like, these kind of weird designs sometimes can steer us in the wrong direction. I really feel like the future of surfing is in kind of going back to the 90s with like chipped out, longer railed, skinny boards, but they got to be really narrow with tons of rocker. And I know they're hard to surf, but man, there's some beautiful surfing to be done. And the reason I say it is because it's cyclical, so it's going to come back, but they complement the sensations that we've gotten used to, and we have them. So why not have that option too? And I feel like more people should be riding a longer rail. And by longer rail, I don't mean a mid-length. I think that kind of can get in the way of good technique. Yeah, it lets you catch a wave. But so I think surfing's going to go down that route. And it's like, those boards are pretty good because they can, if you learn how to ride them well, because they're narrow, they're two-brode really good, and they can act as a step up. And it's hard because everyone runs flat, wide, fast boards, but like if you're generating your board speed off of rail through rocker, then you can curve the hell out of them, and then still ride memorable waves. So it's a bold statement because, oh yeah, these boards are harder to ride, you should buy these. But I think it's going to happen. Stoke.
Yeah. I've got a Channel Islands Proton 6.3, which essentially is 90s shape, right? I think it's shaped as a step up, but it is my favorite shortboard. Only works in good waves. Well, at least for me, I can't get it to go in bad waves.
Well, it's funny you say that, and I called you out on it only because Tanner was like, he wasn't bored with his surfing, but he went through. I was with him in Portugal, and then he came back. But basically, he ordered some Protons, and it made him surf differently, which was at the time like really good. And he was ripping in all kinds of waves. And then I think he took those with him back and like finished the Haleiwa Triple Crown and all that on those. But he had already been on them. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to. And I would let him rather answer and tell that. But I think they frustrate you. I don't think they can't not work. That's bad English, but Like, is that a board that can fit in? Like, it's like, remember your story about being on that bunny chow and it was the only board you had, and eventually you're like, you know what? And you figured it out because it was workable. In fact, it was very good. It wasn't easy, but it produced like lasting and real smiles.
Touche. Touche.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Donald, brinksurf.com. Links in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was good to catch up. It's such a joy to see your buoyant spirit, and yeah, hope to connect someday. It's, you know, New Zealand's on the list, so I'll stay connected for sure.
I'll be back in California for sure.
All right, well, we'll see you then, and we'll chat again sometime. Try on that concept of fascination for size. I'd love to reconnect months down, because it's the best I've gotten, but I think it's good to share it because it really helps you sit in your own little world looking at your own surfing path and your fascination with what's going on, and wrestle with those questions yourself. That's what it's about. Otherwise, what's the point, you know?
Agreed. It's probably going to be the title of the podcast when I release it.
Funny. I love it. All right.
Fascination, definitely.
See you, bud.
Thank you so much for listening. Please share this episode with a friend who you know will enjoy it, and give us some feedback. Let us know what you thought at surfmastery.com on Instagram, or mike@surfmastery.com. You can check out more from Donald at brinksurf.com, and Donald has his own podcast called Swell With My Soul also. The next episode will be with Sean Thompson, so be sure to subscribe and stay tuned.